Billionaire's shocking outburst at Waitress exposed. Her incredible response transforms the room. Sarah felt the familiar weight of exhaustion in her bones as she wiped down the counter, the smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. Oakwood Diner was alive with chatter, the hum of everyday life, a constant reminder of her struggles. It was a typical morning. Families shared laughter over stacks of pancakes while she dashed between booths to take orders, juggling plates and her demanding work life. But today was different. The tension in the air shifted as the front door swung open. She barely glanced up until she heard the distinct sound of expensive leather shoes clicking against the tile floor, an attention-grabbing entrance. Jack, a CEO known for his ruthless business acumen, glided to a booth with an air of entitlement that made her stomach churn. She'd read about him in the news, shamelessly cutting costs while raking in profits. A wave of unease washed over her. Jake waved eagerly from their usual corner, oblivious to the storm brewing. Sarah's heart swelled at his bright smile, but as she approached Jack's booth, her spirits sank. "Coffee and the special?" she asked, nodding. The moment hung heavy in the air. Jack's gaze swept over the diner, a sneer curling his lips. "Is this where the service industry finds its lack of talent?" he scoffed, his voice dripping with condescension. The room fell silent. Sarah's heart raced. Her mind frantically replayed the countless nights spent working to provide for Jake, the late shifts that blurred into each other over worn countertops. She fought back tears, but humiliation and rage twisted in her gut. How could he dismiss her world so casually? She shouldn't care, yet the words echoed inside her head, igniting a fiery determination she thought she had lost. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Sarah felt the pit in her stomach tighten as she centered herself. She took a deep breath, feeling all those late nights and her son's bright future fill her with resolve, and started speaking. "You think we lack talent?" she began, her voice quivering but steady. "I work these shifts so my son can dream. This diner is filled with people who hustle every day, just like me. We bring life to this town, serve families, and share stories. Our work might not be glamorous to you, but it matters." The diner's atmosphere shifted. Patrons exchanged glances filled with empathy, a growing chorus of unspoken support. Jack shifted uncomfortably, his confident facade crumbling as her words resonated. The murmurs rippling through the room announced a collective awakening. Yet Sarah could see the storm roiling behind Jack's eyes, violence mingling with disbelief as he grappled with her humanity. As the weight of tension grew unbearable, she felt torn between the urge to stand tall and the fear of invisibility, a little voice inside whispering that maybe, just maybe, she was stepping into a battleground she wasn't prepared for. Would he acknowledge her resilience, or would he retreat into his world of privilege, leaving her vulnerability stark and raw? The room vibrated with unanswered questions. The clash of worlds set to explode into something neither could predict. The air thickened, a palpable mix of defiance and uncertainty swirling around Sarah as the silence stretched into an uncomfortable void. Jack leaned back, his expression a blend of disbelief and disdain, but in that moment she recognized something different in his gaze, a flicker of concern, a shadow of self-doubt that momentarily pierced his hard exterior. It was a crack in the armor she hadn't anticipated. With her heart pounding in her chest, Sarah realized she had a choice. She could either retreat into the familiar comfort of meekness or push forward, boldly confronting the weight of her reality and everything she had fought for. This was her moment, and she refused to let it slip away. "Your world may be higher, Jack, but that doesn't mean you're above the hard work it takes to build something meaningful," she pressed on, her voice gaining strength. Each word was laced with the resonance of her daily struggles, echoing the sacrifices she made for Jake. The realization that she was defending not only her job, but her identity, sparked a fire within her. As if responding to her courage, whispers among the patrons grew louder. They were no longer passive observers. They were engaged, nodding in solidarity. Sarah felt the tide shift, electricity crackling in the air. With newfound determination, she leaned closer. "Tell me, do you think being a boss makes you a leader? Can you truly lead if you don't respect the people who work for you?" The statement hung heavily between them, compelling Jack to meet her gaze. She watched as the hard-set line of his jaw softened slightly, the edges of his arrogance fraying. This dialogue was not for him alone, it was for everyone in the diner, ensuring that the souls behind the counters were recognized and valued. Suddenly, a weighty realization gripped her. Jack was merely the embodiment of countless others who shared similar views. They were many, and she was just one among them, carrying the dreams of the underappreciated in her heart. But uncertainty still swirled in the depths of her mind. What if this confrontation was not about changing him, but transforming herself? What if by standing her ground, she was awakening something new inside herself, a latent strength capable of shifting her future? Stepping back, she drew in a deep breath, consciously relaxing her posture. Instead of seeking victory over Jack, she chose to embrace the possibility of enlightenment for both of them. "I believe in lifting each other up," Sarah continued, her tone sincere. "It's not about throwing stones or proving we're better. It's about recognizing shared humanity. You might have the capital, but we have the heart." Jack's brow furrowed as if contemplating her words, yet she sensed the tension in him had morphed into something else, a challenge to his status quo. It was a closing of the gap between their worlds, setting the stage for change. But just as Sarah felt a flicker of victory, a phone rang, shattering the moment. Jack, visibly annoyed, glanced down at his device, abruptly breaking the connection. He straightened, pulling himself back into his polished persona with a hardened stare. "I've heard enough," he announced, his voice authoritative, inching back into cold indifference. The diner's warmth began to ebb away, leaving Sarah's heart racing once more, battling a mix of hope and despair. Had she really made an impact? Or was she merely a fleeting echo in a room that quickly reverted to old habits? As the diner buzzed back to life, she couldn't shake the feeling that her leap of faith had only just begun. Feeling a flicker of fear, mixed with resolve, Sarah's thoughts raced. Did confronting Jack open a door to something greater, or had she only chipped at the surface of deep-rooted beliefs? More questions loomed larger now, demanding answers. What if stepping forward ignited something within her that she had long buried? And just as she gathered her thoughts, a familiar face from her past approached the counter, a woman who once inspired Sarah's dreams of a larger life. Her presence felt like an omen, a sign that she was on the edge of a pivotal moment. Would this encounter hold the answers she sought, or would it throw her further into uncertainty? The moment Clara stepped into the diner, time seemed to freeze, and Sarah felt a rush of emotions she hadn't prepared for. Clara had been her mentor, the woman who had first opened her eyes to the broader world beyond the diner's walls. Tall and graceful, with an air of both authority and warmth, she radiated confidence, an alien yet intimidating reflection of where Sarah aspired to be. "Clara," Sarah breathed, a lump in her throat. Would this be the moment she'd seek warmth and reassurance, or would Clara peel back layers of her discomfort? "Sarah, it's been too long." Clara embraced her, the scent of cedar and lavender surrounding her, invigorating yet grounding. "I heard about your little showdown with Mr. High and Mighty," she said, gesturing toward Jack, who was re-entering the room, his demeanor altered but still cautious. "I'm just trying to find my voice," Sarah admitted, feeling oddly exposed under Clara's gaze, as if she was being assessed for the potential she hadn't recognized in herself. "Hey, it takes courage to stand up to someone who believes they're untouchable," Clara replied, encouraging yet probing. "That flame you ignited, what do you want to do with it? Are you ready to change your own narrative?" The question hit Sarah like a bucket of cold water. What was she ready for? More than anything, she craved understanding, to comprehend the dynamic she'd just confronted, and even more crucially, to clarify her own aspirations. "I'm tired of feeling invisible, Clara. It's exhausting. I thought standing up was enough until I realized I don't know what to do next," she confessed, her vulnerability giving way to urgency. "It's not just about being seen, Sarah. It's about what you plan to do with your visibility. Do you honestly believe you can inspire change if you don't lead by example?" Clara persisted, her tone fierce yet supportive. Sarah's heart raced as she considered the reality of Clara's words. Lead by example. The phrase looped in her mind like a mantra. She had never fully internalized that notion. All those nights spent cleaning up other people's messes, standing in the shadows, had carved out a habit of self-doubt. But what if she could shift her perspective? What if she could become the force she believed in, both for herself and for others in the diner? Suddenly, the noise of the diner began to fade away, the conversations drowning in the swell of her thoughts. She envisioned herself at the forefront, not just voicing her concerns, but spearheading initiatives that fostered respect and inclusion. But the idea also brought an edge of fear. Could she truly be a catalyst for change? As Jack approached the counter, Clara stood an arm's length away, suggesting a protective presence. "You have to confront him again, Sarah," Clara prompted, eyes bright with conviction. "This time, make it clear why your voice matters not only for yourself, but for everyone who feels the same way. Those patrons, your colleagues. Show them you're unapologetic in your desire for value." Breathless, Sarah stared back at Clara, her mind ablaze. This was a path she had never considered, yet it resonated deeply within her. The words turned into rallying cries in her heart. The fear of failure suddenly felt dwarfed by the thrill of potential. She recognized it for what it was, an opportunity. What if you're right? What if I can do this? That question spun into countless variations, each more compelling than the last, as she strategized silently. As Jack reached the counter, Clara stepped back slightly, granting Sarah the space to reclaim her voice once more. It was an invitation that could alter her trajectory, and Sarah no longer wanted to retreat. "I'm ready," she declared internally, taking a steadying breath that steadied her resolve. Just then, Jack's ice-blue eyes met hers, and the challenge emerged anew, stealing her resolve. "This is it," she thought, adrenaline coursing through her veins. "The moment has arrived." With a determined forward thrust, Sarah leaned into the confrontation, no longer merely a participant, but an architect of her fate, and that of every voice long ignored. But as her words began to build in intensity, an unexpected revelation cracked the facade she was confronting. Would Jack's reaction reveal more than just his character, perhaps laying bare the fragility of the world he built? As Sarah steadied herself, time seemed to expand. Jack's icy demeanor morphed under the intensity of her gaze, his presence both daunting and illuminating. The bustling diner faded into the background, replaced by the throbbing pulse of her own heart as she observed the tension simmering in the air. Jack stood across the counter, the weight of her confrontation palpable. Yet for the first time, there was no hint of backing down from her role. "What do you want, Sarah?" Jack asked, sarcasm lacing his tone, as if testing her resolve. Laughter erupted from a nearby table, drawing a self-conscious grin from him. Yet his bravado faltered, its shallow depth apparent, as he caught the fire in her eyes. Determination surged through Sarah's veins. All those moments she had shrunk back in his presence, feeling unworthy and insignificant, began to unravel. What if his facade of control wasn't as impenetrable as it seemed? She cleared her throat, feeling the gravity of her words. I want respect, Jack, not just for me, but for everyone who feels belittled or overlooked here. The diner quieted, the mundane chatter stilled by her declaration. She could sense the eyes of her co-workers on her, wide with an unexpected mixture of fear and admiration. Could they be rallying behind her, waiting for her to lead them into uncharted territory, what had once been an intimidating space, now transformed into a crucible of potential? Jack's expression flickered, revealing a hint of confusion masked by arrogance. He leaned closer, challenging her. Respect is earned, not handed out for free. What makes you think you deserve it? She felt the weight of his words. They echoed her deepest fears. Was she truly deserving of respect? Yet instead of cowering, a surge of rage and determination anchored her stance. Because I work hard, Jack. I care about this place and the people in it. I'm tired of you dictating who is worthy of being heard and who isn't. A collective intake of breath swept through the diner, a tidal wave of emotions swirling as her audacity bared itself to the world. The warmth of Clara's encouragement flooded back into her thoughts. Lead by example. This moment was her opportunity to validate not only herself, but everyone who had endured the same dismissive treatment. Jack hesitated, but the challenge painted on Sarah's face stoked a fire within him. You think standing here and shouting will change anything? You're just a waitress. Your words don't carry weight. An unexpected calm washed over Sarah. No one's ever changed history by waiting for someone else to fight on their behalf. You may think my title defines my worth, but it doesn't. My actions do. With every word, Sarah felt the shackles of invisibility loosen. She could see her colleagues shift, nodding imperceptibly, the embers of solidarity igniting. Although Jack's posture remained rigid, something in the air shifted. A vulnerability between them that she hadn't anticipated began to crack through his confident facade. Maybe you're right, Jack said slowly, lowering his voice enough that it almost seemed contemplative for the first time. What if I ask why you're not afraid to lose? His question echoed in her mind, inciting a torrent of realizations. This wasn't just about bravado. Confrontations ignited deeper truths about herself. Because I'd rather risk everything to stand up for my worth than hide behind the walls you've built, she said, her throat tightening with emotion. There was silence, heavy and charged, before Clara spoke up from her spot further down the counter. Sarah's right, Jack. It's time for a new dynamic here. No one should feel less than anyone else because of their role. The air brimmed with energy, and it wasn't just Sarah's heart that raced. Voices around the diner began to echo Clara's sentiment. As they rallied around her, she realized this moment was more than just confrontation. It was the birth of something new. Now Sarah felt unsteady, yet invigorated. Here she was, flipping the script, revising the narrative not only for herself, but for those around her. As Jack's facade started to slip, she understood she wasn't alone in this fight. Change starts here, she thought with fierce conviction, and suddenly the weight of possibilities felt less like a burden and more like an inviting challenge. Just then, Jack's icy blues flashed with something she had never seen before. Fear. For the first time, a sense of uncertainty flickered across his face, and Sarah could feel the shift in the tide. What are you really scared of, Jack? She pressed, leaning into the moment, fully aware that they were on the brink of a discovery that could alter the dynamics forever. In that charged atmosphere, Sarah sensed the edges of everything she knew was about to be reshaped, beginning with Jack's response. The silence that followed her provocative question felt thick, almost suffocating. Sarah searched Jack's face for the truth hidden behind his bravado, feeling a mixture of anticipation and trepidation stir within her. His expression was inscrutable, a mask of complex emotions that made her pulse quicken. "Fear?" Jack finally scoffed, but his tone lacked the familiar bite. In that moment, she glimpsed vulnerability beneath the surface of his arrogant demeanor. "You think I'm afraid? That's rich coming from a waitress. You have no idea how the world works." She stepped forward, pushing a hand against the counter, her heart racing, yet her voice steady. "I think you're afraid of losing control, Jack. Afraid that if people realize they can speak up, you'll no longer be the one in charge." His eyes narrowed, anger flashing momentarily before retreating into a smoky veil of uncertainty. There was something cathartic about stripping away his power, revealing the fractures within. Sarah's conviction surged. The small audiences she had once imagined in her own mind were now vibrant realities, carrying the weight of her words into the open silence of the diner. "What's worse," she continued, "is that you've convinced yourself this hierarchy is normal, but I refuse to accept it. Respect is not a privilege based on title. It is a fundamental right." Rapid murmurs rippled through the diner as her co-workers shifted in their seats, emboldened by her bravery. They began to sense the tide of change, holding collective breaths, their tension palpable. She wasn't just advocating for herself anymore. She was challenging the status quo with each syllable that left her lips. "So what if you're richer? Does it mean you're better than anyone here? If that's the case, then I'd rather be poor and have my dignity than wealthy and devoid of respect." Her own words echoed within her, unlocking the deeper fear she had harbored. The fear of insignificance, the fear of mediocrity had begun to wash away, replaced by a fierce clarity of purpose. Jack fumbled, searching for a retort, but the air was charged. The conversation had shifted from an adversarial confrontation into a dialogue that nudged the boundaries of their oppressive workplace culture. For a split second, uncertainty danced across his features, leaving Sarah to wonder if she was genuinely reaching him. Yet the flicker of hope was quickly snuffed as he recovered, puffing out his chest. "You think leading this place will make you a champion? You're delusional." Fatigue threatened to settle over her, but she refused to back down. "If fighting for respect is delusional, then call me insane. I'm not afraid to ruffle feathers or alter the environment for the better. I've spent too many years disregarding my own voice. You've overlooked me for too long, but that ends today." The diner, a whirlpool of mixed emotions and galvanizing energy, began to shift in alignment with her resolute stance. She felt a spark, full of possibility, igniting another layer of her identity that had long been dormant. She could be a catalyst for change, not just for herself, but for those who had remained in the shadows. Every action counts, Sarah thought, steeling herself, even as self-doubt prowled in the recesses of her mind. She wanted to summon the courage to lead not just this moment, but each day thereafter. Jack's face turned a shade darker, the pressure of the crowd seeming to crush him, or perhaps unveil him, both a leader and lost soul. "Keep thinking this way, and you'll regret it," he warned. But this time his words lacked their usual thunder. "I'll take that chance," she replied, heart pounding with nervous exhilaration. Jack hesitated, becoming increasingly aware of the palpable energy radiating from the group around him. For the first time, she sensed that his power teetered on the edge of unraveling, unsure of how to respond. In that incredible, fragile moment, Sarah realized this battle wasn't just for respect. It was a battle for identity and recognition, and as the resolve settled deeper into her bones, she knew she was prepared to face whatever came next. What if the next confrontation became not an escalation of turmoil, but a channel towards real change? As Jack's stormy expression flickered with uncertainty, she felt her heart surge with overwhelming potential. She wasn't finished yet. The question lingered. Would Jack allow her to redefine their roles, or would he strike back harder to keep her in her place? The din of chatter faded to an anxious whisper as Sarah's words hung heavy in the air. Every eye in the diner bore into the escalating confrontation, wading through a murky mix of disbelief and newfound hope. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. She had crossed a threshold, stepping into uncharted territory where vulnerability and resolve danced a precarious tango. Jack shifted his weight, an uncertain king momentarily dethroned. "What do you want?" He pressed each word through clenched teeth. Beneath the facade of anger, there was an unmistakable tremor of uncertainty. Sarah didn't flinch. She had already summoned the audacity to challenge him. Now she needed to harness it further. "What I want," she declared, her voice steady as though it were a lighthouse guiding ships through troubled waters, "is to change how we define our roles in this place. I'm tired of being silenced because of your ego." The tension crackled. Co-workers exchanged glances, some nodding imperceptibly. The prospect of solidarity felt intoxicating, a siren's song urging her deeper into the waters of change. But nestled in the back of her mind, doubt lingered. Was she truly capable of leading this charge, or would Jack, backed by his wealth and influence, dismantle her aspirations? Taking a breath, she forcibly pushed doubts aside. She couldn't afford to hesitate now. "This isn't just about me," she forged ahead, her words gaining momentum. "This is about everyone who's felt dismissed, undervalued. When you treat people as expendable, you create a toxic environment. It's time for us to hold each other accountable." Jack's expression soured, rage bubbling beneath the surface. "You're going to regret this, Sarah. You think you can rally my employees against me? They know better." In that moment, she realized the precarious nature of her endeavors. Rallying co-workers meant exposing them to Jack's wrath, but her instincts screamed that they deserved to be a force together. "Maybe," she replied carefully, "but I think they also crave respect more. People have more power when they stand united instead of as individuals afraid of you." Challenging his power dynamic unlocked something within, and she watched as the crowd began to shift, an invisible line forming behind her. Her passion acted like a spark to dry kindling, igniting something that had long been dormant in her colleagues. Renewed energy vibrated in the air, urging her onward. "Jack, I understand you want control, but is it worth the cost of actual respect? You're alone in your high tower, while we can build something real and meaningful down here together." She could feel the weight of her proposition enveloping the room, each word giving life to what had previously remained unspoken. His eyes darkened again, the challenge igniting an even more primal energy. "Real change involves sacrifice, Sarah. If you push this too far, it will backfire." The warning struck her like ice water. Exposing her ideals meant potential fallout. Sarah wrestled with the thrumming heartbeat of her ambition against the panic clenching in her stomach. Was she prepared to take that risk? "I'm not backing down," she asserted, each syllable fueled by conviction. Discovery writhed within her. She found herself inhaling strength from within rather than seeking it externally. You can either adapt to the shift, or you can drown in the wave of change. In that moment, Sarah caught a glimpse of something she'd only ever dreamed of, the chance to lead, to forge her destiny away from the invisibility that had once defined her. She felt a decisive step forward, an acknowledgement of the leader she could be, not limited by titles but by courage. The diner pulsed with potent energy, the tides turning in ways she previously could never have imagined, and as the potential for real change solidified around her, she noticed Jack's doubt crystallizing into something more palpable, more dangerous. Sarah understood that the next move could unravel everything she had gained. Would other employees falter under the growing pressure? Or would they join her in her stand against an oppressive status quo? As a palpable silence composed itself, inhaling collective anticipation, the question loomed. Could she truly keep going against all odds? Would she ever truly claim the respect and recognition she sought, or would she find herself swept away in the chaos of an undoing? The air crackled with tension as Sarah stood her ground, the swirling emotions in the diner intensifying. Every fiber of her being was on alert, aware that this moment was pivotal. The vulnerability she'd shown had ignited a fire, yet within her, the fear of failure loomed. In that charged space, doubt and determination wrestled violently for control. Jack's fury morphed into something almost tangible, a beast ready to be unleashed. "You think they care about your speech? They care about their paychecks, Sarah," he spat, his voice a venomous hiss, seeking to dismantle her fragile coalition. Yet as each insult landed, Sarah sensed that his authority was not as solid as it had appeared. Looking around, she registered the expressions of her co-workers. Some were apprehensive, their loyalty wavering, others were intrigued, secretly yearning for the change she championed. With a small flicker of resolve, she opened her mouth to respond, determined to not just survive this confrontation, but to thrive amidst it. "You're wrong," she said, her voice a mixture of calm and intensity. "They want more than a paycheck. They want to believe their work matters. They want to be seen, heard, respected. I know it because I feel it too." The words spilled from her like water breaking a dam. The vulnerability she had once feared now felt like a shield. But uncertainty nagged at her. Had she read the room right? Would they support her, or would she find herself standing alone against an avalanche? To shield herself from the potential backlash, she recalibrated her approach. Instead of calling attention to Jack's failures outright, she shifted to his strengths. "Look, Jack, your leadership has built this place, and that's undeniable. But your style has created division instead of strength. Isn't it time to evolve?" The words felt daring, yet they opened a floodgate of unexpected possibilities. Jack's face darkened, but beneath the exterior, uncertainty flickered in his eyes. For the first time, he looked less like an imposing figure and more like a man grappling with his own insecurities. The realization that he might not hold the ultimate power began to sink in, and Sarah seized the moment. With each rallying word she spoke, she noticed shifts in her co-workers. One colleague, a quiet programmer named Sam, nodded slowly, breaking the barrier of silence. Another, a cashier named Linda, crossed her arms defiantly at Jack. Their subtle but significant gestures emerged as a collective shift, each one a testament to the impact of Sarah's challenge. As the crowd became emboldened, it was as though Sarah was weaving a tapestry of courage, one fiber at a time. The energy surged. She felt it pulsating within the diner, wrapping around her and giving her strength. This newfound sense felt intoxicating. Jack's discomfort escalated. She could see it. His once confident demeanor began to crumble as he realized that the narrative was shifting from his authority to the collective voices of his employees. It was the first time Sarah felt like she might just be strong enough to take him on. Yet lingering doubts beneath the surface begged her to question her strategy. She had sparked a movement, but where would it lead? "Listen to me carefully, Jack," she continued, her heart pounding, words flooding forth like a cascading river. "This isn't just about authority. It's about partnership. It's about growing stronger together. We can't expand the business in a fractured environment. You can either recognize this moment as one for growth or let fear dictate your actions." Jack leaned in, anger swirling in his expression, but behind his fury sat the unmistakable tremor of fear. Sarah recognized that the battle was evolving, and she resolved to keep going. She would push for change, for a better workplace for everyone, even if it meant standing on the brink of an abyss. As the revolution of the moment shifted in her favor, Sarah felt the tide of belief pull her forward. But standing on the precipice, she couldn't shake the sense of impending conflict. What would Jack do next? Would he retaliate against her? Or might he see the potential for something greater? Her thoughts momentarily distracted, Sarah glanced around the diner. Each moment exposed a new layer of weakness in Jack's armor, yet the potential for blind revenge coiled within him, ready to strike. As the weight of her aspirations pressed heavier on her heart, one thought consumed her: was she willing to sacrifice everything to break free from the shadows? With trepidation and thrill gathering in her chest, she braced for the counterstrike. What would she have to lose, and who would follow her into the uncertain fray? Jack's eyes darkened even further, and in that moment the diner felt smaller, confined by the looming presence of his wrath. Sarah's heart raced as she mentally prepared herself for his reaction, a lightning strike of retribution, or perhaps begrudging acknowledgement. She steeled her posture, refusing to falter beneath his gaze. "Partnership?" Jack echoed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's rich coming from you. Just a few moments ago, you were nobody, just another cog in the machine I built." His words were meant to cut, but each slice felt less effective than the last. Sarah's resolve hardened. She sensed the support of her co-workers becoming tangible, a faint pulse threading through the air that revolved around her. "No, Jack. You built this machine, but it's time to reconsider how we operate." Sarah fought to keep her breath steady, feeling the adrenaline surge through her. This isn't about being just a cog. It's about being valued. It's about understanding that the sum is greater than its parts. We can no longer operate in silos. We either adapt or we become obsolete. The surge in her voice startled some of her co-workers, drawing nods from others who had been quiet observers. Sam shifted uncomfortably, glancing back and forth between Jack and Sarah, while Linda continued to cross her arms, her expression fetching a mixture of defiance and solidarity. Courage was infectious, and Sarah was unlocking it. "Obsolete?" Jack slammed his fist on the table, sending a tremor through the surface. "I created opportunities for everyone here. You think they want to follow a waitress with big dreams?" There was an edge of desperation in his voice, a flicker that told Sarah he knew he was losing control. "I don't think they care about titles," she replied, fighting to maintain her focus. "What they care about is respect. We are the heart of this diner. We bring it to life every day. You talk about opportunity, but you dismiss our potential." She stepped closer, echoing the rise of energy around her. Jack reined in his anger, breathing heavily. "And if I decide to fire you, to protect my business?" His challenge hung in the air, testing Sarah's resolve. The sweat along her brow felt cool against the mounting heat of the moment. "You could. But consider this. If you act out of fear, you'll only fuel the fire beneath your empire. The question is, do you want to be the iron fist that rules over ashes, or the leader who cultivates a thriving community?" Sarah pushed her palms together, feeling the weight of expectation shift once more. Jack stared at her, visibly torn. The mask of his authority was cracking, replaced by glimpses of insecurity. As she observed his reaction, Sarah felt a surge of clarity, a momentary revelation. She had power. Not the power to dominate, but the power to inspire and create unity. "Think carefully, Jack," she added, her voice even and measured now. "The truth is, fear is a shackle. It binds us in silence. If you choose to confront this together, we can build something remarkable. If you choose to fight against it, you will lose." In that pause, Sarah held her breath, desperate to know if her words had reached him or if he would stubbornly cling to the weight of his own authority. The diner's patrons were static, eyes darting between the two figures in this charged confrontation. Yet even as she stared him down, uncertainty edged into her mind. Could Jack really change, or was she simply provoking a beast that would retaliate with reckless abandon? The tension pulled her thoughts inward. If he chose revenge, what would she do then? Was she prepared to lose more than just a job? Sarah took stock of her newfound conviction, aware that she was now standing at a critical juncture. one that could redefine her life and professional path. The unsettling quiet that followed felt like a reckoning for both of them. It was a moment rife with possibilities. "All I ask is for you to consider this path," she said softly yet firmly. "Will you grow with us, or will you watch as your power crumbles?" Just as she waited for his answer, an unexpected voice broke through the tension, the voice of a timid yet bold young waitress. "I will follow Sarah," she declared, shaking as she stood up from her table. "If she speaks for us, then we're with her." And in that pivotal moment, Sarah realized she could no longer step back. She needed to embrace the role she had unintentionally created for herself as a leader. She had ignited a fire, but now she must learn to wield it without allowing it to consume her. With Jack's indecision hanging heavy in the air, Sarah felt the compelling gravity of her own aspirations. The final question lingered like a thick fog. What would happen next? Would she have the courage to face Jack's wrath, or could they find common ground? The path ahead glimmered with uncertainty. In that moment, acceptance of her new reality resonated within her. Right now, the wild unknown beckoned, an ultimate test of her will. What lay beyond this confrontation held the key to her true self. She was determined to discover it. The silence that followed the young waitress's declaration felt like a gentle echo through an abyss, crackling with the tension of a transformative moment. Sarah stood rooted within the spotlight of unexpected leadership, wondering just how deep her influence would run. Jack remained a statue of fury, his tangible wrath dangerously teetering on the edge of a broader decision. "Are you really siding with her?" Jack's voice barely masked his disbelief, a faint tremor revealing how unsteady he felt. The room stilled, all attention pulling toward the waitress, who had once seemed so small and timid. Sarah could almost hear her heartbeat merging with the collective doubts swirling among their peers. The young waitress squared her shoulders, emboldened by Sarah's courage. "This diner is more than just a job to us," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "We deserve a say in how things are run. We're not afraid anymore." Who was this person standing before Jack and stirring the embers of rebellion? Sarah marveled at how inner strength could emerge from the most unexpected places. Jack shifted his weight, eyes narrowing. "You just don't get how this works, do you?" he replied, now at the center of a brewing storm. "You think a few stirring words will change my business? You think people care about your little fantasy of teamwork?" His bravado faltered, revealing a hint of desperation that Sarah had seized upon moments ago. She tightened her jaw, steeling her resolve. There was a ripple of support in the room. Co-workers who had kept silent began exchanging anxious glances, sensing the temperatures rising. It became clear to Sarah that she needed to articulate precisely what was at stake, not just her aspirations, but theirs as well. "This isn't fantasy, Jack. It's reality. A business thrives when its people are motivated and respected, not silenced out of fear." Every word felt like a subtle hammer, lifting weight off her spirit. The acknowledgement of their shared experiences fueled her confidence. She was not alone in this confrontation. While she held the torch, many eager hands were reaching, desperate for reform. Jack's face paled slightly, revealing a crack in his mighty facade. "And what makes you think they wouldn't rather follow me? I'm the one who provides for you all," he retorted, but the edge of his voice wavered, betraying his uncertainty. "Without me, you'd all just be lost," interrupted another voice from the back. A seasoned cook named Mark, once thought of as too worn and tired to stand up. "We're sick of being lost. We've always been lost in your version of success, Jack. We're alive, and it's time you see us." In that frisson of support, Sarah felt the power shift. Jack's world was marching toward a reckoning, and with each united voice, she could taste the possibility of change, a pivot point from dominance to equality. Yet a gnawing fear for the unknown gnawed at her stomach. What would this awakening cost? Sarah took a breath, grounding herself. "You have a choice to make, Jack," she stated, her voice steady against the gathering gale of emotion. "Continue to build walls, and you'll watch your business crumble under the weight of resentment. Or open a door, let us in, and emerge stronger than before." As Jack met her gaze, the realization that the power he wielded was faltering began to dawn upon him. But would he cave to the uprising beneath him, or would he crush it with an iron fist? Just as the air thickened with anticipation, a sudden thought flickered through Sarah's mind. Was navigating this leadership role even what she truly wanted? She had ignited change, but at what cost to her own dreams? "What if I fail?" A quiet voice inside her began churning with anxiety. Yet the answer hadn't escaped her for long. Perhaps failure wasn't the end. Perhaps it could pivot into something greater. But the time for contemplation was fleeting. The diner's fabric was shifting, and she had no choice but to embrace the challenges ahead. Jack closed his eyes briefly, a storm brewing within him. And right then, with the tension reaching a boiling point, Sarah felt invigorated by a decision that loomed. The moment was palpable. Would he lash out, or would he awaken alongside his once voiceless staff? As uncertainty gripped the air, she understood. The next steps would define everything: her aspirations, her leadership, and ultimately her identity. Would she rush ahead into the fray, daring Jack to challenge her newfound authority, or would she retreat safely back into the shadows she fought so hard to escape? With her heart racing, she wondered how far she was willing to go. The answer to that question would soon unfold, and Sarah was ready for whatever battle lay ahead, her resolve solidifying as she took her place among equals, standing shoulder to shoulder with the people she'd grown to trust. The next words Jack spoke would either forge a new beginning or entrench them deeper into conflict. His choice hung in the balance, and Sarah's future loomed just beyond the horizon, pulsating with both promise and peril. As the tension surged in the Oakwood diner, an atmosphere charged with the weight of palpable change enveloped Sarah and her colleagues. Each individual presence, standing either in quiet support or voicing their truths, forged an invisible barrier against the looming authority of Jack. Sarah felt a profound shift within her, the confidence fortified through collective resolve, igniting a new sense of purpose. Jack stood there, tension coiling like a spring in his shoulders. He had always dictated the terms of their interactions with unyielding authority. Yet today, the gravitational pull was shifting, exposing the vulnerability beneath his facade. The patrons looked on, eyes darting between their determined waitress and the businessman who had often made them feel small. "So is this where you're ready to be the hero, Sarah?" Jack scowled, his bravado desperately attempting to reclaim its ground. Yet in his voice she detected something different, the ghost of unease. "You think this speech will sway anyone here? It just shows how misguided you are." Determined, Sarah held her ground. "It's not about heroics, Jack. It's about maturity. Leadership isn't about exerting dominance. It's about lifting those around you. If you've ever cared about this diner's success, now is the time to prove it." Every inch of her being was infused with resilience that had been stifled for too long. Her words hung in the air heavier than any confrontation she had faced before. In the awakening silence, the weight of the moment crystallized. Jack hesitated, his conviction beginning to waver. Perhaps it was the united conviction of those around him. Maybe it was something deeper. Sarah sensed that they had penetrated his armor. Humiliation and realization wove through his expression. She capitalized on his vulnerability, feeling emboldened by the ephemeral victory unfurling at her fingertips. "I'm willing to hold your hand, Jack, but you must let go of fear and embrace a new approach." The unshakable conviction in her voice resonated, not just within herself, but echoed amongst her peers. "Together, we can redefine this place. But I refuse to be silenced by you." With that charismatic strength surging through her, Sarah felt herself transform. She had stepped from behind the counter and confronted this giant, becoming Catherine's epitome, with purpose, clarity, and authenticity. This moment became less about standing against Jack and more about standing up for the transformation she desired for her team and herself. Jack's eyes narrowed, his conflict boiling. "You really think you can influence me? Why should I trust you?" His voice wavered, revealing the vulnerability seeping through his authoritative shell. "Because," Sarah countered smoothly, "I've fought harder than anyone else in this room to be seen. I know what it's like to feel ignored or overlooked. Leading means recognizing those feelings in others." As she spoke, her colleagues began nodding one by one, voices quietly escalating into unified agreement. Linda stepped closer, her brows knitted in concentration. "You've built this place on our backs, Jack, but if we are to flourish, change must come from the top down." The weight of her words swirled in the air, drawing attention like a lighthouse beacon in a dark storm. The once suffocating atmosphere transformed. The patrons who had sat in quiet support began to voice their agreement. One speech got the ball rolling, but her relentless courage ignited a cascade. "I stand with Sarah," Mark called out, courage flowing from somewhere deep within. "Every day we pour our souls into this diner, and it's time our contributions are recognized." As murmurs of support rippled through the patrons, Jack visibly flinched. Their voices were no longer a united front against him. They had become advocates for change, emboldened by Sarah's journey. "Enough!" he barked, the facade of control fading quickly. Yet in the shadows, Sarah sensed their collective power flowing through her exchanges, manifesting as hope and strength. The environment shifted completely as Jack's overwhelming demeanor frazzled into moments of uncertainty. "What you're feeling right now, Jack," Sarah conveyed, "is the fear of losing what you believe makes you powerful. But power should never drown out compassion or camaraderie, nor should it abuse authority. It must create an atmosphere where everyone feels valued." His eyes flickered, a hint of understanding creeping in, replacing the stubbornness that once cloaked him. And then a brief silence enveloped the diner, punctuated only by the exchanged glances that communicated eager anticipation. "Change like this doesn't have to be a loss for you," she pressed on. "By evolving our workplace, becoming a supportive environment where every voice counts, you can uphold your position while becoming a leader that others truly admire. Isn't that the goal?" With each word, Sarah conquered her fears, the need for validation shifting into a desire for change, not just for herself, but for all who had been wrongly dismissed. For the first time, Jack's defenses faltered, revealing a man who perhaps faced challenges remarkably similar to her own, a realization that the fragility of their perceptions could coexist similarly against the currents. "Let's set aside our differences and acknowledge shared humanity," Sarah concluded. "I may be just a waitress, but my voice holds as much value as yours on this journey. I will lead if you allow it. Together, we can change the narrative." In that pivotal moment, amid hesitant breaths and collective hope, Jack paused. The silence expanded, heavy with anticipation. Every eye intently awaited his response, a chance for evolution resting entirely on his shoulders. "All right," Jack finally exhaled, voice low, but the anger transformed into something softer. "Let's try your way. I'll listen." With those words, the chains of disparity began to free themselves, a slow release that resonated through every being present. They were not just individuals fighting against an oppressive force. This was the beginning of a new chapter. Emboldened and brimming with clarity, Sarah recognized her evolution was more profound and impactful than she could have ever imagined. She had solidified her identity and transformed the narrative that once restricted her perceptions. She wasn't simply surviving. She was thriving and crafting a vision where collaboration weaved through their interactions. In this moment of collective resolve, Amidst hope, fear, and courage, Sarah seized her potential as a catalyst, laying the groundwork for something profound to flourish in the Oakwood diner. She stood surrounded by colleagues she had once thought of only as co-workers, not partners. Each acknowledgement offered validation and recognition for resilience and fortitude built through adversity. Sarah had finally stepped into her power, a symbolic bridge between positions transformed by courage and comprehension. The Oakwood Diner had become a place not merely defined by formal titles, it was defined by the heart and soul of its staff, and she had become the leader she had long yearned to be. As the evening dimmed into twilight, the diner buzzed with renewed energy. Sarah's heart swelled, knowing she'd transformed not just the attitudes of one man, but also the framework of their entire environment. Each day would champion newfound respect. She felt elated. She had conquered her fears, achieved this profound awakening, and established herself as a beacon of transformation she once only dreamed of. Now she was more than a waitress. She had become a leader, ready to take the next steps into a future filled with promise. Emboldened by her new path, Sarah sensed something fundamental had shifted, not just for her, but for the community they could build together. And with renewed vigor, she moved towards the kitchen to support her team, ready to uplift those who had quietly rallied behind her, ready to nurture the dignity of every persistent dream, every voice that needed to be heard. Together, they would shape the course of the Oakwood Diner and ultimately their lives. The journey had begun. Now, I need you to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to dive into these exclusive emotional stories and not miss a single twist. Leave a like now to show your support. The algorithm depends on you. Comment your reactions and theories about this astonishing conclusion. And don't wait even one more second to share this inspiring video with at least 5 friends who need to witness this powerful transformation. Your support amplifies these stories that resonate deeply within us all.